Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one of those unbelievable moments where fate, courage, and kindness collide in the most unexpected way. It's about a struggling single dad, a terrifying moment thousands of feet in the air, and a powerful billionaire whose life would be forever changed by the actions of one ordinary man. On the outskirts of a quiet town lived a man named Daniel Carter. Daniel wasn't famous, rich, or powerful. In fact, most people would simply describe him as an average guy trying to survive life's daily battles. Daniel worked 2 jobs just to keep a small apartment over his head and food on the table for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Ever since Daniel's wife passed away 3 years earlier, Lily had been his entire world. Life wasn't easy for them. Daniel worked long hours as a mechanic during the day and sometimes picked up night shifts, fixing equipment at a nearby private airstrip. The work was exhausting, but Daniel never complained. Every night he returned home with tired hands and grease on his clothes, only to be greeted by Lily's bright smile. "Did you fix something cool today, Dad?" Lily would ask. Daniel always smiled back and replied, "Every day is cool when I get to come home to you." One evening, Daniel got an unexpected call from the small private airport outside town. A charter jet had landed unexpectedly due to a technical issue. The regular maintenance crew was unavailable, and they needed someone immediately to check the aircraft before it could take off again. Daniel hesitated for a moment. It was already late, and Lily was asleep, but the extra money would help with rent that month. So he quietly left a note on the kitchen table for Lily and drove out into the dark night toward the airstrip. When Daniel arrived, the private jet was sitting alone on the runway lights, gleaming under the dim glow of the floodlights. It wasn't an ordinary aircraft. The sleek design and luxurious markings told Daniel this jet belonged to someone incredibly wealthy. Standing near the stairs of the jet was a woman in a sharp business suit, speaking urgently on her phone. Daniel didn't recognize her, but the airport staff whispered something to him. "That's Victoria Hayes," one of them said. Daniel raised his eyebrows. Victoria Hayes was one of the most powerful billionaire CEOs in the country. She owned one of the largest technology corporations in the world. Her decisions moved markets and shaped industries. But right now, she didn't look like a powerful billionaire. She looked worried. Daniel climbed up the stairs and introduced himself. "Ma'am, I'm Daniel. They asked me to check the aircraft." Victoria nodded quickly. "Thank you for coming so fast. We were told there might be an issue with one of the systems." Daniel stepped inside the cockpit with the pilot and began checking the control panels and diagnostics. After several minutes of inspecting, he found something unusual. One of the sensors connected to the hydraulic control system was sending inconsistent signals. It might have been nothing, or it could become something very dangerous. Daniel explained what he found to the pilot. The pilot frowned. "The system still reads operational." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck thoughtfully. "It's operational for now, but if the signal cuts out during flight, it could cause problems controlling the aircraft." Victoria looked between them. "How long would it take to fix?" Daniel hesitated. "At least 2 hours to replace the sensor." Victoria sighed. "I have an international board meeting in the morning. Delaying this flight would cost millions." The pilot studied the readings again. Everything still appeared stable. After a long pause, the pilot said carefully, "Technically, we can fly with this sensor temporarily. It's a low probability risk." Victoria looked at Daniel. Daniel didn't like the feeling in his gut, but the pilot was the one flying the aircraft. Finally, Victoria nodded. "Let's go." Daniel stepped back as the passengers boarded and the jet prepared for takeoff. As the engines roared and the plane lifted into the night sky, Daniel stood there, watching the lights disappear into the darkness. Something still bothered him. He couldn't explain why, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. 2 hours later, Daniel had just returned home and was pouring himself a glass of water when his phone rang. It was the airport. "Daniel, we need you back here right now," the voice said urgently. "What happened?" "The jet you inspected. It sent a distress signal." Daniel's heart skipped. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door. When Daniel arrived at the airport again, chaos filled the control room. Radar screens flickered as air traffic controllers spoke rapidly into their headsets. The jet carrying Victoria Hayes had experienced a serious malfunction mid. The faulty sensor Daniel had discovered earlier had suddenly failed completely, triggering a chain reaction that affected the aircraft's hydraulic system. The pilot was struggling to maintain control. The plane had turned around and was attempting an emergency landing, but the runway conditions and failing controls made the landing extremely dangerous. Daniel stared at the radar screen. Then he had an idea. "I need to talk to the pilot," he said. One of the controllers looked at him. "Why?" Daniel pointed to the system diagram on the monitor. "If the hydraulic control is failing, there's a manual pressure override valve beneath the auxiliary panel, but it's hidden behind a secondary casing. Most pilots don't even know it's there." The controller quickly connected Daniel to the pilot. The cockpit audio crackled. "This is Daniel, the mechanic who inspected your jet earlier." The pilot sounded strained. "Good timing, Daniel. Controls are getting sluggish." Daniel spoke calmly. Listen carefully. Under the right side auxiliary panel, there's a small red pressure override valve. You'll need to remove the cover plate. There was silence for a moment as the pilot searched. Then the pilot's voice returned. I see it. Daniel continued giving instructions, guiding him step by step. Turn the valve clockwise slowly. That should redirect manual hydraulic pressure to the control surfaces. A tense pause followed. Everyone in the control room held their breath. Then the pilot's voice came through again. Control response is improving. Relief spread across the room. But the danger wasn't over yet. The aircraft still had to land safely. Daniel stayed on the line, helping the pilot stabilize the plane and align for the runway. Minutes later, the jet finally touched down. The landing was rough. The wheels screeched loudly against the runway, but the plane stayed upright and rolled safely to a stop. The entire control room erupted into applause. Daniel leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath. For the first time that night, he allowed himself to relax. Victoria Hayes stepped off the jet 20 minutes later, shaken but unharmed. Before leaving the airport, she asked one question. Who was the mechanic who helped guide that landing? But Daniel had already gone home. He had a daughter waiting for breakfast in the morning. The next morning, Lily was eating cereal when Daniel heard a strange sound outside. Car engines, lots of them. Daniel walked to the window and froze. 3 black Cadillac SUVs had pulled up in front of his small apartment building. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as several men in suits stepped out of the vehicles. One of them knocked on Daniel's door. When Daniel opened it, the man smiled politely. Mr. Daniel Carter. Daniel nodded cautiously. Ms. Victoria Hayes would like to speak with you. Daniel blinked. Victoria Hayes stepped forward from behind the security team. She looked completely different from the stressed woman at the airport the night before. Composed, powerful, confident, but her eyes held genuine gratitude. Mr. Carter, she said softly, you saved my life. Daniel scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I just explained where a valve was. Victoria smiled slightly. That explanation prevented a multi-million-dollar aircraft from crashing and saved everyone on board. She looked around the modest apartment hallway. May I come in? Daniel stepped aside. Lily peeked out curiously from the kitchen. Victoria knelt down to Lily's level and smiled. You must be Lily. Lily nodded shyly. Victoria stood again and turned to Daniel. I've spent years building companies and making billion-dollar decisions, but last night reminded me how fragile life can be. She paused. And how powerful one person's courage can be. Daniel shrugged. I was just doing my job. Victoria shook her head. No, Mr. Carter, you were doing something far greater. She handed him a small envelope. Inside was a check. Daniel nearly dropped it when he saw the amount. It was enough money to pay his rent for years. Daniel looked up, stunned. I can't accept this. Victoria smiled gently. Yes, you can. And it's only the beginning. Daniel blinked. Beginning? Victoria nodded. I need people like you in my company. People who stay calm under pressure and care about others. She handed him a business card. I want you to come work for me. Daniel stared at the card, unsure what to say. Victoria continued. You saved my life. Now let me help change yours. Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Dad, are we going to be rich? Daniel laughed softly for the first time in days. He looked at Victoria, then back at his daughter. And in that moment, Daniel realized something incredible. Sometimes the biggest changes in life don't come from money or power. They come from one brave decision made in the right moment. And sometimes, the universe rewards courage in ways we could never imagine. Because the night a single dad saved a crashing jet. He didn't just save a billionaire. He changed the future of his own family forever. And the 3 Cadillacs parked outside his small apartment were only the beginning of a brand new chapter in his life.